Do you like Pokemon? Of course you do. You clicked on this video. Why wouldn't you? Now, do you like miniature games? Wait. Hold up. Where are you going? Wait. Hey. Hey. So, do any of you remember Pokemon Duel? It was a mobile game introduced in 2016 that involved two players facing off in what was essentially tabletop Pokemon capture the flag chess. If that makes any sense. The general premise of Pokemon Duel was to use both strategy and probability to maneuver one of your Pokemon to your opponent's goal zone while thwarting their attempts to do the same to you. The probability comes from the fact that each Pokemon was a game piece on a spinner that was spun to determine how a battle would end. Interesting, right? Well, unfortunately, Pokemon Duel was discontinued in 2018, so no more Duel. But on the bright side, some dedicated fans have recreated it in the Steam Workshop for Tabletop Simulator, so if you want, you can still play it there. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. What if I told you that Pokemon Duel was based off one of the most obscure financial flops the Pokemon franchise has ever seen? In 2006, the Pokemon Company released the Pokémon Trading Figure Game under the development of Tsunekazu Ishihara, Koichi Uyama, and Masayuki Miura. Sorry if I butchered any of those names. Apparently, the Pokémon Trading Figure Game was made because some fans were asking for collectible miniatures, while others were asking for a tabletop Pokémon game. When the Trading Figure Game launched, there were planned to be 3 sets of 42 figures released. Including extra promos, there are a total of 135 figures that you can theoretically collect. I say theoretically because realistically it just can't happen. Some of the figures from the later releases simply don't exist. This is because the Pokemon TFG was officially cancelled in 2009, cutting off the international release of the second set and sending the third set into complete obscurity. It wasn't until 2016 when the TFG's spiritual successor, Pokemon Duel, came out. And well, we all know how that went. The most likely cause of its disappearance is a combination of competition, cost of production, and the higher price point for consumers. What I mean is that these were physical figures that must have cost some serious money to produce, and things only get worse when you look at the selling prices. Based on my research, the single figures supposedly cost $4 each, but when you'd buy larger quantities like a 4-pack, the value didn't change, meaning that 4-pack cost $16, creating little incentive for consumers to buy more figures, like the starter sets. Let's compare that to the Pokemon Trading Card Game. At the time, single boosters were about $4 each, but the value shot up when you'd look at other deals, like the fact that starter sets were only $10. This is likely because the cost of production for the TCG was ridiculously lower than the TFG, leaving room for more value in customer deals. And with Pokemon being its own competition, it only makes sense to cut out the weaker of the two product lines. But enough of me yapping about what the game was. What about what it is? How do we play this thing? Well, don't worry. I'm gonna explain that, because nobody else has done it on YouTube, so I'm here for you. I'll post an individual tutorial later, but for now, here's a comprehensive look at what the game was and how to play it. So in order to play the game, you'll need to select a playmat and make sure each player has enough Pokemon to fill their bench. The bench is where your Pokemon start the game, and is technically not a part of the field. Additionally, if you are playing a format that uses trainers, you will need a trainer figure as well as 3 trainer cards for each player. Trainers aren't used on the 3v3 playmat, but you may choose to use them or not depending on how you and your opponent feel. Additionally, all trainer figures are functionally the same, so there's no reason both players can't share a trainer figure. While we're on the subject of trainers, I also want to point out that there are like 8, maybe 9 trainer cards that actually exist. And so you could easily just copy the text onto an index card and it'll function all the same. They're not like cards that you need to shuffle into a deck or anything. It's one of those that you could just do it yourself. It doesn't hurt the game. On the field, there are normally 2 entrances for each player, a goal for each player, and a host of pathways marked by connected spaces. There are 2 ways to win, either to move a Pokemon onto your opponent's goal, or to lock your opponent so that they can no longer move or attack on their turn. This can be achieved by blocking your opponent's entrances and removing all of their Pokemon from the field. Each Pokemon figure is placed on a spinner with a ring that is either black or white. This is used to distinguish who the Pokemon belongs to. Additionally, each Pokemon has a type, MP value, and a spinner dial of possible attacks. The type of a Pokemon rarely matters in the game, but it is an aspect that could affect the game in some rare circumstances. The MP value of a Pokemon is their movement point value, which you could guess determines how many spaces a Pokemon can move on your turn. As you look at some of the figures, you'll notice that the Pokemon with higher MP generally have weaker attacks. This is because the maneuverability of a Pokemon often compensates for the weaker stats. Lastly, there are the attacks. A Pokemon's attacks are the colored wedges on the spinner itself. When Pokemon battle each other, both Pokemon spin for their attacks and compare the final results to see who wins the battle. An attack can be one of 5 colors: red, white, purple, gold, and blue. These colors represent the priority of the move. I'll go over them from lowest to highest. Red attacks are always misses. Missing is literally the worst. If you get a miss in a battle, you are completely at the mercy of your opponent. You might survive if your opponent doesn't deal damage, but still, it is the worst. White attacks are basic attacks. Read what the attack says if it has any text. If the attack has a damage value, that is how much damage the attack deals. If there isn't a damage value, then that attack will probably tell you to spin again. If both Pokemon deal the same amount of damage, then the battle is a tie and nothing happens. However, if one Pokemon's damage is higher than the other, then the weaker Pokemon is knocked out and sent to the Pokemon Center. We'll get to what that means in a second. Purple attacks are attacks with special effects. The effects of a purple attack are only triggered once it wins the battle. Purple attacks outrank both white and red attacks, and therefore will always win those battles. Instead of dealing damage, purple attacks have a star value. If a purple attack is spun against another purple attack, the move with the higher star value is the winner. If both moves have the same star value, then the battle is a tie and nothing happens. Gold attacks are just like white attacks, except they have the ability to beat purple attacks. However, gold does not outrank white. Between gold and white, the winner is only decided by damage, so if the damage is tied, nothing happens. However, gold is a higher priority than purple, so gold beats purple, but purple beats white. But gold and white still have to battle each other. Lastly, blue attacks are the highest priority. If a Pokemon lands on a blue attack, then the battle ends without either Pokemon taking damage. If a blue move has any effects, those are also resolved. Like, for example, Turtwig has Withdraw, which gives him weight if he spins blue. One more thing is that some Pokemon figures have an ability. This can be seen on a gold ring around the spinner, or on the underside of the figure. Just pay attention and keep an eye out for any abilities and any effects. They're rare, but very important. After everything is set, you and your opponent can either agree on or randomly decide who goes first. If you go first, on your first turn, your Pokemon have 1 less MP, meaning you're not allowed to move a Pokemon with only 1 MP, and your other Pokemon won't move as far. But don't worry, that's only on your first turn. Everything will play out normally on your opponent's turn and afterward. When it is your turn, first you may choose to play a trainer, then move, then tap or attack using the same Pokemon you moved. Don't worry, I'll go through each part of what I just said so you can understand it. If you want to play a trainer card, you can only choose to do so before you move. When you play a trainer card, you must declare which of your face-up trainer cards you are using, then spin a trainer figure. If it lands on success, you may use the effect of the trainer card and flip it face down when the effect is resolved. Some trainers will end your turn if you use them, but not all do. If your turn is allowed to continue, you would then go on to the move step. However, if the trainer spins a miss, then your trainer fails, meaning your turn ends immediately and your selected trainer card remains face up because you didn't use it. When you go to move a Pokemon, you must declare which Pokemon you are moving, then move that Pokemon up to their total MP. Pokemon moving from the bench can only move to an empty entrance space that player controls. This move still uses 1 MP. Additionally, Pokemon cannot normally move through other Pokemon or occupy the same space as another Pokemon. If you cannot move a Pokemon on your turn, you lose the game. When a Pokemon is moving, they cannot move to a space they have previously occupied this turn, meaning no backtracking. After a player is finished moving their Pokemon, they may choose to let that Pokemon battle an adjacent opposing Pokemon on the field or tap an adjacent ally Pokemon affected by a special condition. If a Pokemon begins its turn next to an opposing Pokemon, that player may choose to battle with that Pokemon instead of moving. This is a technicality of the not being able to move win condition, where the attack is technically an extension of the move, regardless if the Pokemon was truly moved or not. But it's important to remember that you cannot attack or tap from the bench. You need to be on the field. When a battle occurs, both Pokemon spin, determining the winner of the battle based on the results of the spins in comparison to each other. If a Pokemon loses a battle to damage from a gold or white move, that Pokemon is knocked out and sent to the Pokemon Center. If there is no longer any room in the Pokemon Center, then the Pokemon that has been there the longest is moved to the bench and has wait. Wait is a game condition where on the next turn, that Pokemon is not allowed to be selected to move. This means if your Pokemon receives wait on your turn, it goes away on your opponent's turn. Wait is different from all special conditions and cannot be removed from any Pokemon. If a Pokemon moves next to an ally Pokemon that is asleep or frozen, that Pokemon may tap the affected Pokemon in order to remove that special condition. Tapping takes on the same roles and properties as attacking, so you can't do it from the bench and you can choose to do it instead of moving. Both attacking and tapping Pokemon ends a player's turn after moving. Remember, you can only use the same Pokemon you declared to move to either attack or tap a Pokemon at the end of your turn. Now, before I forget, there is one more key component to combat in the TFG: surrounding. Surrounding is considered a maneuver, so it doesn't take up the role of an attack or tapping on your turn. When all spaces on each side of a figure are occupied by opposing figures, then that figure is automatically knocked out. But something important to remember is that Pokemon affected by sleep or frozen cannot contribute to a surround. So if I had a Pikachu that had an opposing Charizard on one side of it, and an opposing Piplup closed the only other space for the Pikachu, my Pikachu would be knocked out. However, in this same hypothetical situation, if Charizard was asleep when Piplup surrounded Pikachu, then my Pikachu is not knocked out. The last thing I want to go over are the special conditions. Since I've wasted enough time yapping over the rules, I'm going to simply put them on screen for you to pause the video and take a screenshot for yourself. Special conditions can come from a variety of attacks on Pokemon, primarily the purple attacks. If a Pokemon is affected by a special condition, that condition stays on the Pokemon until that Pokemon leaves the field or is given a different special condition. This means that Pokemon can only have one special condition on them at a time. I also want to add that there's one of these conditions that I think should just be excluded from the game, and that's the noxious condition. Noxious is just like poison, but instead of doing 20 less damage, the affected Pokemon does 40 less damage. What gets me is that poison is already a condition, and noxious is just so much worse that it can make entire Pokemon pointless to use. So I don't like acknowledging noxious as a feature and would personally replace it with poison. But that's just me. And that's pretty much all for the rules. There are some other technicalities and FAQ related stuff that could help any lost souls on the topic, but I feel like I've wasted enough time explaining the rules and need to get back to adding to the conversation. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I will do my absolute best to answer them. So, while the game has been dead for over 15 years now, a couple friends and I have tinkered with a homebrewed version of this game that adds several new optional layers to an already brilliant game, solving functional problems as well as expanding the possibilities with a limitless library of new Pokemon to play with. We call this homebrew of the TFG Pokémon Duel, simply because it's pretty much the same game, but Duel sounds better. In the Steam Workshop version, the spins were determined with the roll of a 20-sided die accompanied by a character card. This prompted me to think of the possible applications. Pokemon has been releasing small-scale figures since it got popular in the 90s, and I've been holding on to mine since I was a kid. Could I make these into miniatures? Yes! Yes, you can do it! And I'll show you what I did! First, I'd check Bulbagarden's page for the TFG figure listings to see if the Pokemon already existed in the game. If so, I'd design a character card with the stats translated for compatibility with a D20 and make everything look good. These are what I call my proxy figures. If the Pokemon wasn't in Bulbagarden's database, then I'd look at all the figure listings from Pokemon Duel on Cerebi. If it's on that list, I'd screenshot the stats and interpret them into a game piece for the TFG in a digestible, balanced, and interesting way. The reason I put it that way is because Duel was different from the TFG in a couple ways that stick out when we start talking game design. 1. Duel used evolutions as a mechanic, which I have little to no interest in implementing because it sets up power scaling that is non-existent in the TFG. And 2. Pokemon Duel was a gacha game, meaning the figures were not all balanced to one another because the game made money off of people trying to get rarer and stronger Pokemon. Anyway, once I pan out the stats, I compare them with other existing figures. Is it balanced? Is it unique? Is it interesting? If yes, then I create a matching character card and make everything look good. Yeah! Finally, if the Pokemon wasn't in Duel or the TFG, then we do a complete homebrew, baby! We just think of ideas that'd be interesting and unique, and try to implement them as fair and non-confusingly as possible. And BAM! New Pokemon! As I have remodeled, repainted, and repaired these figures, I also got to thinking about other possible game modes for this game, using new maps. But so far, nothing has worked out. I tried making a map based on Pokemon Unite, however, when I went to playtest it, the game took over 3 hours. So that idea is going back to the drawing board. At this point, that's pretty much all I have to talk about on this subject. I have several character cards designed for homebrew Pokemon Duel, and I'd be more than happy to share details on my work if anybody is interested. Leave a comment if you think I should post devlogs on my work regarding the homebrew of Pokemon Duel. I love tooling around and adding to this game, it's just so much fun to me. As far as logistical stuff goes, a majority of the research I've done for this video was done using Bulbagarden.net and PKMN.net. With some help from Wikipedia and various findings on YouTube, Reddit, just all these weird corners from the internet. It's also important that I give a huge shout out to the internet archives like the Wayback Machine. Because of their efforts, I was able to find an archive of the original Pokemon Trading Figure Game webpage. None of this could have been done without any of these online entities. So to those out there, thank you. Thank you so much. As for everyone here, a sincere thank you for watching. I love being able to talk about stuff I'm truly passionate about, and I hope I'll be able to keep making content like this the next time I return from college. Until next time, hasta la pasta, my breadsticks. I'll see you around.